least I took something of a detour in the December, January months because I was focusing on some bills that were in the state legislature and meeting with our delegates and senators for the General Assembly to try to lobby on some bills. And short story long on that. There's some minor progress just at the state level. I mean, nothing that happened is really going to affect anything in Arlington as far as I can see. But there was some in the general overall landscape of broadband in the state level. There was some modest progress, and I think after the special session ends, we're meeting again with some of the legislators local legislators to try to get them to put in some bills that we think would be key for stuff we're doing here and just in general. So like I said, that was something of a detour for me in terms of my time and my focus. But some of the things that we had, some positive developments we've had, well, Charlie, for one, has been going around to civic associations and doing presentations and getting good feedback. Charlie and his wife.
Just for a second, how many of the civic associations have you been able to brief? Probably 3 or 4 or more.
Charlie, how many?
3 civic associations so far.
Okay, great. Good. I think you briefed Jackie's actually. Jackie on who's on the commission. I think she attended one of the ones that you briefed. So excellent.
Yep, and we're starting to reach out to business improvement districts now.
Okay. Oh, okay, right. Great. Good.
Yeah. So I was going to say that Charlie, when you all may have seen it. If not, Charlie can maybe drop it in the chat. But Charlie and his wife published a pretty good column that was published in the Progressive Voice series in Arl Now, and that drove a pretty decent amount of traffic to our website, and we had a lot of people sign up. We've actually added quite a bit of expertise to our stable of our planning committee. We have somebody now who's a fiber optics engineer, and we have somebody who's a telecom lawyer actually who works at FCC now and used to work at one of the public broadband utilities. So yeah, in that regard, it's been really good. And one of the members had suggested reaching out to the business improvement districts, and so he actually compiled a list and gave it to us. So Charlie's been reaching out to them, and I think we're trying to get the meetings scheduled with them as well. And then on the local front, we had meetings with the county manager, which Jack was present at, and he's interested in hearing more, but I have a follow-up meeting with him on Friday to continue to discuss, and also Samia Bird, our new chief of equity and racial diversity. I can't remember the name of her actual title, but she'll also be there at the meeting. We'll be discussing our proposal and kind of potentially a way forward. So I may have more information after that, but trying to think what else we had going on. We also met with Jack and his team last week to discuss the digital equity project that they're going to do at the Gates of Boston and Arlington View Terrace. And I'm sure you guys have been briefed or will be briefed on it. But their plan is to use CBRS. They're going to partner with a nonprofit, the Nirvana Institute. Yeah, so they'll be looking to do a CBRS project on it. We have our own views kind of on what we'd like to see happen with that. But I mean, I don't know if it's really worth going into all that, but we're watching that project kind of closely. We are interested in how it may inform especially some of the results of the feasibility study, how it would inform the county's own our approach to maybe forming a broadband authority in the future. I know Takas has been talking to us, and he's still interested in this. So I think that's it in terms of our major updates. We're still kind of in just an outreach and socialization mode primarily, but we are still keeping a dialogue going with the county board on this. So
Great.
I think that's it.
Questions? I'll open it up for the commission. Frank?
All right, okay. I was going to hit the raise hands. Thanks, Tim, for joining us again. And I appreciate some of the correspondence you've shared with Mary and I. And looking at the Alexandria letter, obviously it looks like obviously they've been well behind us in many ways, since they only have a monopoly provider of broadband at this point in terms of Comcast. We had met with the Alexandria Tech Commission previously. I guess it was a year or two ago, wasn't it, Mary?
Yes.
But in reading that most recent correspondence, the thought occurred to me that mightn't it make sense to actually go to a joint Arlington, Alexandria, and Arlandria authority? It just seems to me that broadening the base, I mean, obviously it's still geographically compact, but it just seems to me that that there would be a lot of advantages to doing it that way. It's just, I know politically there'd be a lot of hurdles, I know, trying to get the two jurisdictions to work together, but it seems to me that there would be sharing of the risk would be one of the greatest things, and obviously I think they would probably have the greatest unserved homes, unserved residences there. And anyhow, just a thought. I don't,
Thanks for that. And I forgot thank you. I actually forgot to mention that. I should have put that on my list. But yes, everyone is on the same page. We've been working actually really closely with the head of the Information Technology Commission for Alexandria, Catherine Rice. She's a longtime community broadband proponent. She actually cut her teeth on a bunch of projects in North Carolina, Wilson's Greenlight, for instance. So she's kind of provided us a lot of advice, and she's been watching closely what we're doing over here. But she worked with her commission members to actually put a formal recommendation out to the mayor and to the city council, advising them to form a broadband authority as part of building their version of Connect Arlington. And so to get to your point, though, Frank, absolutely. We raised this at the very beginning of our conversations with the county board members, that they should be taking a hard look at this, because I agree. I think it would give us more kind of economy of scale, some cost sharing. There'd be a lot of benefits. I mean, the downside obviously is being that it's a bit more a bureaucratic kind of lift. Both they would have to coordinate with each other, but most of the other broadband authorities that are successful that are out there right now, like Roanoke and the Eastern Shore of Virginia, are conglomerates of either several counties or cities or a mix of the two. Right. So yes, we're going to continue to encourage them, and we've raised this with Mark Schwartz as well, and that was really one of the only times he actually took notes when I was talking to him. So I think he was impressed by that potential. So.
Okay. All right. John, Mike, and then Jack, and then Martha. John?
I think Mike had his hand up first. So
did he? Okay, Mike, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, thank you, John. Hey, Tim, thanks for coming back, and I really appreciate what you're doing here. I just want to mention one other venue where this could be socialized, and I tried it myself, and I'm not sure to what effect, but because I live close to the Lee Highway corridor, the folks who are out there now inviting public engagement around the missing middle study and the ideas about what the zoning changes and other design features of more dense housing in Arlington would be. We're soliciting folks, and I was invited to one of those meetings. I went. I suggested that the digital services be part of the design. That if you're going to be designing housing for middle and lower income folks in Arlington, relative to the wealthy folks like me, we want to take into consideration, the digital connectivity. And one of the other citizens said, well, in Arlington, that's no problem at all, is it? And I responded back that it's not a problem if you're indifferent to price and if you're indifferent to equity, but if you want it to be a market competitive price close to the cost of service, and if you want it to be universally available, yeah, you have to do more than just let the market forces play out. And so I know they're busily doing kind of socializing that as a public engagement thing. And I wish we could get them to focus more on digital. And some of those areas might be, sort of like Greenfield, if they're going to be putting up all new buildings and putting up all new utilities in the right away. So that's my suggestion. Thanks.
Right. Right. Thanks, Mike. And just very quickly on that, one thing that's come up, and this is something of a statewide issue as well, is this idea about new buildings, and basically incorporating something into the code that would, anytime multi-unit buildings or multi-dwelling units or whatever they're called, MDUs, are built, that they have kind of neutral wiring. So that people can hook in there, so there's there isn't this possibility of one telecom kind of, cooking up a deal that gets them exclusive access. And in terms of what we were calling for, if we were to pursue something like the Ammon model, there would just be one line going in there, and it would just be all virtually over the top anyway. But yeah, it's a good point. I think that, and I know that Holly Hartel at DTS, from what I understand, she part of her job is to actually go to buildings, the new development, and try to convince them at least not to sign exclusive deals. So I think some attention is being paid to that, but definitely if there's, and I think also maybe Jack could probably speak to this better than me, but as far as I understand, we have been pursuing a kind of dig once policy. So I think they have been putting down conduit at least. I don't know if they've been putting down dark fiber as well when the roads are open, but all those things need to be considered for sure. But if you could send me or drop in the chat like the name of the group that you're talking about, we would definitely like to engage with them.
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, John?
Yeah, I had a thought about the possibilities of engaging with other municipalities, our neighbors, Alexandria, Falls Church City, and the thing that really gave me pause about that was, frankly, that we have made a major investment in Connect Arlington here that I do not believe those other municipalities have, and so we have an asset that we could theoretically transfer to a wireless services corporation to serve as the foundation for the capability. And in researching some of the other municipalities around Virginia that have used this authority, most of them used it to start building the infrastructure. They used it to raise and borrow money to start building the infrastructure that the market wasn't providing. And I think with Connect Arlington, we have a municipally owned asset that we could leverage to really jumpstart this capability and competition rather quickly. And my concern about the regional participation would be that they don't have those assets available. And then how do you value Arlington's contribution to that community versus the other? And I think that leaves in a whole lot of small p political and bureaucratic red tape that could slow down the process. Mm-hmm. So that's a concern that I have about engaging with the other municipalities. Although I think longer term, a kind of inside the beltway, third party competitor would be fantastic, because the economies of scale would eventually play out. I do think from the housing perspective, it's really critical that we treat internet access like the cost of living for utilities, because it is, and this is just a broad statement, not to you, Tim, this is just for everybody, right? My opinion, thinking about this, it's like transportation, it's like rent, it's like groceries, it's part of the cost of living. And if we want to make Arlington a place that's affordable for middle class families to live and raise and grow their family, I think internet access has to be a part of that calculation. And I think, Mary, from the commission standpoint, we may be able to engage with our counterparts in the Housing Commission and the Planning Commission to say that this item of cost on the home budget needs to be factored into our planning assumptions at the very least. And then that would start to bring this issue into our planning decisions. And that it might add weight and emphasis on driving down the cost of internet access, broadly speaking, which will have positive impacts on equity, but also be valuable for every other household in Arlington. So that's just a general comment.
No, great. Thanks, John.
John,
Jack?
if I could,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
if I could just,
Go ahead, Tim.
sorry, if I could just respond. Thank you. I think those are wonderful comments that I totally agree with. I would just put out there one thing that came up once when we were when one of my collaborators, Devin Kissel, and I were talking to somebody at AHC, and when they were building one of the most recent buildings, they were asking the county for some money to help install the internal wiring conduits and things like that, so that the building would be wired. And I think they were turned down that money, from what I understand. And we had asked them, well, why can't you use AHIF funds for that, the Affordable Housing Investment Fund? Because it seems like the county should be investing in that. I mean, we're already there's a lot of public investments in these committed affordables to begin with. So I agree. I mean, those things need to be raised with the housing staff, especially. And I'm on the committee for the housing committee for NAACP, and I've definitely raised this as an issue. And I think we'll be also pursuing it there as well, because it's an equity issue. It's a housing issue. We need to have internet at home. So anyway, sorry, that's just something to think about.
No, great. Thanks, Tim. And obviously, our area of equity has been around digital equity, right? That's one of the things that this commission has looked at. And of course, Jack and his people have really done a lot, particularly this year. Jack?
Yeah, I wanted to bring Frank into the discussion earlier than later on the FCC. I sat in a discussion, Frank, yesterday with John Stankey, the CEO of AT&T, talking about the state of affairs in terms of telecommunication policy. And he made some really candid comments, which I thought was sort of outstanding. He said, first of all, we're living under a technology plan, which was developed in 1996. 1996. He's
right, the Telecommunications Act of 1996 just celebrated the 25th anniversary.
He said it's long past its usefulness. He said the lifeline is unsustainable. There's no way. It's based on phone service to rural areas. They can't survive under that. And he said what's happened is we've politicized things like net neutrality. It depends on what administration's in, what side we take on it. And he had some really cogent discussion about the fact that we need to roll up our sleeves and start looking at ways that we can modify and form that legislation in a different legislation that allows for broadband access to be supplied to those who need it. We just got a study today that said 200,000 students in Virginia, the state of Virginia, lack broadband access. 200,000 kids in the state of Virginia lack broadband access. So to me, that's pretty significant. I was talking to probably one of the leading senior people in Google the other day, and he said to me something which I thought was really interesting. He said, "You know why we did Google Fiber?" And I said, "Because you wanted to lay fiber." He said, "No, it's not profitable. What we wanted to do was to poke the incumbents to recognize that the benefits they got out of the 1996 Telecommunications Act are really inhibiting many providers who could do a lot more than that." And I was just interested, is there a sea change taking place, do you see, in the FCC? And I realize it's 2-2 right now, and you got to get another person in there. But we have a friend, I think, in the White House who may put somebody in who's inclined that way. But do you see this sea change taking place? And maybe that these discussions about fiber in the ground, broadband connectivity, that you'll have people step up to the plate now if they can recognize, if they feel it's a fair level playing field.
Yeah, I think, obviously the FCC has been trying to address some of the issues. Lifeline, they've been able to make some changes within the confines of the legislation to permit Lifeline and some of the other funds, the Connect America funds, to be used for broadband. Initially it was just supposed to be for phone service, and then you wound up using it for cell phones. If you remember the Obama phones. So the FCC has been trying to keep up. The chances of major legislation on this area probably it's going to take a little while. The '96 Act was many years in the making. I think there are certain areas where there is sort of bipartisan support, and that is for addressing the access issue, particularly in the rural areas. A lot of money's gone there. I think now there does seem to be a pivot. There's some recognition that we have the affordability issues in the urban areas, and I think that's going to be one of the priorities of the current, at least the interim chair, Jessica Rosenwar. So there's a group of 30 Democratic Congress people did call for her to be named the permanent chair just this past week. I think that she stands a pretty good chance, but it's going to be probably several months before we get a third Democratic FCC commissioner, so the FCC can actually enact anything that's controversial. Anything that's controversial is not going to fly because of the 2-2 split. But I think, in Congress, I think there is the recognition, bipartisan recognition that we need broadband for jobs, for economic growth. I think where there are sort of differing philosophies in how to achieve that. So that's where the tough part's going to come. But I think at least there is some bipartisan support there, and I think there's going to be more money coming. I think one way or the other. In fact, I believe Senator Warner has proposed that to whittle down the state and locality money, but to earmark, using the term earmark, but to actually to basically identify $50 billion of the $350 billion for broadband. So again, broadband is still right top of mind in Congress, and so I'm relatively optimistic that we're going to continue to see focus on that. As far as a major rewrite of the '96 Act, I think I think one of the things that will drive it are some of the privacy issues and the Section 230 liability, the platform issues. So I think and the tech. It was really the AT&T monopoly issue was part of what drove the '96 Act. We had the divestiture there, and but it was really to light a fire under competition. You see what we've gotten, by basically the idea was to get cable into telephone and telephone into cable, and we got that in spades. And in many ways, but we also got the reformation of the AT&T monopoly in many ways. So we've got basically in 3 pieces instead of the, I think, 7 or 8 original Bell operating companies. But I do think I think there is a recognition that we've got to relook at antitrust, and I think the Google and Facebook antitrust litigation may morph into some legislation. I know Amy Klobuchar has introduced some legislation to try to reform the antitrust process. But obviously, telecom is a big part of all of this, and it's hard to argue that you've got monopoly in discrete markets. You could say Facebook and Google have a duopoly in digital advertising in many ways, but there's still a lot of smaller competitors in that area, but they guard their market pretty closely. So I think we do need some antitrust changes. I think that's going to be one of the big things.
Okay. All right. Jack, anything else before we move on to Martha?
No. Thank you, Frank.
Yeah. Okay. Martha?
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for
Back
waiting.
back to the question we started out with, which is doing something jointly with Alexandria. I know that if you had a bigger underpinning, we'd be talking about something else. But Jack, I want to ask you, tell me if I'm correct, that when we started this years ago, that we thought we would make money off of the fiber that we had created. And that has been very difficult. And how much have we invested, Jack?
Well, it's really that's really not true. I mean, we made a lot of money because that was based on an estimate we got from Comcast at the time to continue the iNet, and at the cost for them we're looking at $3.3 million a year to cover the public county and school buildings that we had in place. So the investment we made, probably outright, is probably, I gotta get the numbers in front of me. It's probably about $27 million in terms of cost, in terms of putting fiber into the ground, which is there and operating. The challenge we've had is the licensing it. We had a model that would allow us to license the fiber, but the problem with it is it put all the liability on the licensee, not the, the license people who were licensing the fiber, not us, the county. And that's very difficult when people are trying to get some certainty in the fact that they have a foundation fiber, they've got it for a certain period of time, and the county just can't come up to them and take it away from them after, a year because they want to take it back. And that's the way that franchise agreement was written. And we put a broadband commission on it. I think, Mary, you were part of that, right?
I was.
Yeah, painfully so.
I was.
And Mary's team came back with some pretty good analysis that it was the business model was faulted in terms of doing that. But in terms of delivering service, if you take that projection we got from Comcast at that time, which was 2000 and I think 13, we've more than paid for the investment by not having to pay for the carriage of the what we call the institutional network at that time. I don't know if that answers your question the way you
So
wanted it, but that
what part of what we have bought does Alexandria already have?
what
I'm
part?
really just trying to get at, will we be subsidizing Alexandria?
Well, it costs more to build to bury fiber today than it did then. Going back to the AT&T guy who was saying the other day, it cost him $1,000 to go buy a house with fiber. It cost him $600 to connect to fiber. That's $1,600. It's not profitable any longer. And so what you found out with Verizon is that when Verizon was after they did Arlington, they looked at Comcast at Alexandria. They had a couple things happen. The head of that group died, and they decided they weren't going to continue doing it, and it wasn't profitable. And so the reason Alexandria lives on Comcast is there's no alternative. The challenge you're going to have in Alexandria is historical. You just can't put conduit in the ground in Alexandria.
Right.
You got some
That's right.
pretty historical process you go by.
Hmm.
That's
It's
why
very strict.
Georgetown was the last place to be wired in D.C. I was living in Georgetown at the time when Comcast finally made its way into the home. But
Yeah,
that's a
so
long time.
they're gonna have a challenge, and Comcast has been gracious to them, frankly. When you look at the statement we got from Comcast and the cost per building for us, and to see what Alexandria is paying, Comcast has given Alexandria really some benefit of what we did. Recognizing, I don't think there was an interest in corporate to see the same thing done in Alexandria because it would not have been in their interest. And so what we've got is a model that costs them money to pay per building, but it's far less than was estimated we'd have to pay back in 2013.
So we're still, obviously, Tim, you can hear there's still even debate on this commission about whether we did a joint, but I think we'd have to, that's a bridge that would really, the narrative would have to be pretty powerful, I think.
Mary, you should be
Martha?
part of a group that goes and redid what you did before and determined, where are the spaces that would need to be filled by Arlington. I think you would get pushback on that. Arlington is not going to want to subsidize. unless it's something minor and there's a real trade-off.
Did Mary, did the Broadband Commission looked at the option of forming a wireless services corporation and transferring our assets to that corporation to provide service?
We did not, we did interview people, Jack, you remember this, we did interview people who'd done a broadband service, John. We did not make the recommendation because at the time, what we were focused on is trying to leverage Connect Arlington and lower the barrier of entry to leverage Connect Arlington. At the time, the discussion for that task force was, look, it would be a lot of administrative work if we, in terms of balance, right? If we could lower the barriers to entry to access the, correct me if I'm wrong, Jack, the 894 strands, right, that we'd set aside for commercial use or innovation, that was the focus. Now, and by the way, Jonathan was on as well.
That's right.
Who's on the call as well. So that was our focus. We certainly did look at it, John, as all right, this is something that could be considered, but you'd really have to take the environment has changed so much since we made those recommendations, that you'd really have to look at the pros and cons. And Tim, obviously, I think the lifeblood of digital has become even more, John, as you were mentioning, as if a utility, right? So it was certainly critical then, but now it's moved, to necessity. So how do you
Might it?
balance that?
I would. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I asked that to ask. It feels like there's consensus on the commission. Maybe I'm misreading my fellow members, that this is an area we would recommend that the county government look into the feasibility of. Not jumping into what the right solution might be today, but it seems like it's an area that warrants an additional look, and so I raise that to say to kind of throw it out there to ask whether or not we want to make that an official recommendation of this commission to the board.
To look at the pros and cons. Now there has been, Tim, I have not seen it, but there has been an assessment, right, by the county of Jack, there was an assessment of what it would take to stand up a BAA. I mean a broadband commission.
I don't think so. I don't know, Tim, you may know more than I have. I know there's been a lot of discussion, but I don't know if there's been actually a return on ROI on what it would take to do it.
I think all that there has been is that so we met with Libby. I think it wasn't long after we had met with Jack, I think, for the first time, and he was the first person to tell us about the Broadband Authority as a phenomenon. And we started looking into it, and so Jenna and I went to Libby, and like I don't remember what we went to go talk to her about. Well, we actually brought up the Broadband Authority. We gave her the FAQ that the lawyers had produced for some law firm had produced for Virginia, for VACO, the Virginia Association of Counties. And I think Libby tasked the deputy county attorney to kind of look into it, and then she came back with and I don't know if it was ever produced on paper or not, but apparently her legal assessment, which I think was made before there was the State Corporation Commission final order in the case of Declaration Networks versus the Eastern Shore Broadband Authority. So when we met with her in September, she was still saying the deputy attorney was still telling us that that we couldn't compete on price, that we couldn't do X, Y, and Z things, and that's when we gave her the SCC ruling. And then all of a sudden they stopped making those arguments. So in terms of, so just to back up a little bit, and maybe to get at the heart of what you're talking about, what we've been asking the board to do is simply to form the authority, because just forming the authority obligates them to do nothing. It is just a legal vehicle. So they can form it and just sit on it. But what they could do in the meanwhile, instead of just sitting on it, is appoint a board of competent people. People who have telecom expertise, people who have business expertise, people who have legal expertise, whatever what it would take to come up with a plan and really look at it. Because I think what we'd have to do, and this is what the Eastern Shore Broadband Authority, their founder Patrick Cody has talked to us a lot. He shared their business plan with us. And now this is a completely different environment, mind you, but I think what he's saying actually makes a lot of sense, which is to go and look and find out we have a lot of anchor institutions here. We have a lot of large businesses. And it may not be that we'll be the ISP for them, but maybe we can provide transport. Maybe we can provide bulk. Interestingly enough, bulk internet is the main revenue source for the Eastern Shore Virginia Broadband Authority, for instance.
Interesting.
So just assessing needs would be a very good, first step in terms of coming up with a plan. And I don't think if we formed an authority, we would be doing residential the next day. I think we'll have to sign up I think, Patrick's point was that you need to get cash flow positive first, and then you can move on to residential. But I think in our case, what we'd probably want to do is look at the business side of things, anchor institutions, especially the hospitals and things like that. And assess their needs, and if we could sign them up at some point, and some of them might be in long-term contracts at this point. We could have that on one side, and then we could maybe even talk some of those larger anchor institutions into helping us fund digital equity projects. And whether we just do something like CBRS, or whether we do actual fiber to the home, at least if we had an authority, we would be able to do that. And I think if we formed an authority and just turned over Connect Arlington to them, so that the government was the client, that would be a big win in terms of client for the authority. And that's so anyway, none of that is obviously concrete, but it's just some food for thought in terms of how we would proceed.
Hey, Tim?
And also your strategy is, and then Mike and then Phil. Mike, have you had that? I thought you already asked your question and you had a lingering hand up, but you actually had another question. Is that the deal?
Both of those things are true. It's more of a brief suggestion, and that is,
Okay.
Tim, would it be sufficient to just follow your idea and create the entity and then focus the study on what the operating model for that entity ought to be? And it sounds like it would be quite possible to create the entity so that in theory, it could have a multi-jurisdiction service area. But in practice, the initial operating plan would be exclusively Arlington. And then you could take your time thinking about under what terms and conditions other jurisdictions would. So it sounds like you could bake that in as a sequencing question that you don't have to answer right now. I like your idea of let's create the entity now. Let's do the study, see what will work. And it seems to me you could create the entity such that it was expandable into neighboring jurisdictions if that made sense to all the parties down the road, but don't try to tackle that right at the front end.
Okay. Phil? And then Jack, is your hand a lingering hand, or did you want to respond to something?
No, I think it's the residents of my shot, my vaccine, my hand goes down.
Got it. Okay, Jack.
I want to take it down, but it won't come down.
Oh. Okay, thanks. Phil, over to you. Tim, I'm sorry we're keeping you longer than I had promised you.
No, it's fine. I plan to stay for the duration anyway.
Okay, great. Phil?
Yeah, a couple of things. Different. One, would it be helpful if we thought about this as a commission for the next meeting or two, and then imposed a crisp recommendation to the county board on this question of the broadband authority? Or would events already have overtaken us at that point? That's the first question. And the second question is kind of technical, and I guess it's mainly for Jack. And that is this: do we have an idea? Do we have a rough count of how many households and how many kids in Arlington County do not have access to basic broadband service right now?
I can answer the latter question. We have it from schools, and it's not a question of absence. They have some sort of access. Raj, if he was here, Raj Kumali would tell you they've got something. Is it adequate? No. And could it be better? Yes. But the number is probably around 19,000 families and kids that are in a situation where they don't have access to the sufficient broadband to be able to really work on a regular basis, to do virtual learning, to do the to get the access. Now we've benefited immensely from Comcast Essentials. You know, we've got almost 1,000 kids on that. They put in these wireless hotspots, but the problem with these wireless hotspots, they're MiFi Wi-Fi's, they have caps, and so when they hit a certain cap, they die, they stop, and so if you try to teach a lesson, it just doesn't work. So that's about the general number, and again, it crosses not only kids but adult learners, and you got a lot of affordable housing folks who, you know, for whatever reason, just can't, you can't afford it. They're making decisions, hard decisions, and they'd rather live off the phone than use a wired connection.
Okay. And Phil, your first question about us thinking about the next couple of meetings. Yeah, John?
So Phil, I think, it seems like there's a lot of speculation and memory recall about what the county has and hasn't done on this issue. And I appreciate Tim bringing his experience to the table, but I think as the commission, we would benefit from asking a formal question to the county government for any sort of information publicly that they can share about what they have done to study this or look at this issue to inform our conversation first. Because it didn't sound like, Tim, the response you got via Libby was in writing or something that is shareable. So while I trust that you're sharing your recollection, I'd like a formal response from the county as to whether or not they've looked into this, to what extent we've looked into it before we make a policy recommendation. I think we owe the staff that courtesy to not just shoot from the hip. But I agree that we should take that information and write a crisp, targeted recommendation that we can all agree to as commissioners.
So you want to target that for March? That we.
I think it depends on when we can
question.
get information back from the county, Mary. Right?
Yeah.
They obviously have a turnaround time, and I think Jack has a few things on his plate right now. So. I'm not sure.
Only a few.
Yeah.
Okay. Any final question for Tim, and we'll move on to our next agenda item. All right. Well, Tim, thank you so much. Charles, we really appreciate your team coming on as well, Tim, to support. And your passion for this is impressive. What? Kevin, I'm sorry. Did you raise your question? I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did have a question, but I don't know that it wasn't for Tim. Jack, did you say there are 19,000 families in APS that do not have sufficient broadband?
Not just APS. I'm talking about the entire county. Those
Okay.
There were a number of families that just don't have single family, don't have kids that are on food stamps or snaps,
Okay.
those types of things, and they're all over the county. The kids I think we had the numbers 8,000, something like that. For the kids.
No, it's not that high at all. It was about 1,000 that they kind of narrowed it down to, 1,000 households. So no, 8,000 was a wild guess that APS took.
Yeah, I remember that.
Back in the summer, but no, it wasn't anywhere close to that. So, I was going to say if it was 19,000 households out of the 26,000 in APS, that would not be a good number.
Yeah,
it's much lower.
No, sorry to confuse you. No, it's the county in general. Do you want to give us an update where we are on Comcast Essentials, Kevin?
Yeah, so I mean, we're approaching 1,000 students we've connected since the start of the program. And from all of the data that Raj and I guess team have shown, they thought there was about 1,000 households that could be eligible for the program. And we're at, I think it's about 540 households we've connected. So that is a wildly successful penetration rate. We don't get those kind of numbers, especially in a competitive market like Arlington. So with 54% roughly. I mean, those are pretty good numbers, and we have close to 1,000 kids we've connected as a result of the APS and county and Comcast partnership.
Yep.
Okay, Jonathan.
Yeah,
And
Frank
the-
may get into this, but hello. Frank may get into this in a minute, but the FCC did and Congress approved some assistance for school kids, and they're working on additional relief in the current bill that they're working on in the reconciliation bill. So there's going to be some direct financial assistance. I think it sounds like most of the Arlington kids are not having an access issue, but an affordability issue,
Yeah.
which Congress has directly addressed and is continuing to work on right now. So hopefully that will help. But I do like the idea more generally of looking at what the county did in response to our recommendations and trying to see if we can't get a recommendation forward about creating an authority and what that would look like. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jonathan. Phil, did you have a follow-up question, or is your hand
Yeah,
just
just
dangling?
real quick. What
Okay.
in round numbers has been the direct cost to the county for connecting that upwards of 1,000 households?
Well, Kevin can talk to us. We pay a set fee, $9.95 per family, per household. So Kevin said about 500 and some odd families.
Yeah,
so.
I can look up the number, but yeah, it's $9.95 a month. The county signed a 12-month contract, and 2 of those months are free. So they're paying for 10 months. It's 10 months. You're paying for 10 months, but you're getting 12 months at $9.95 a month. So roughly $100 per person for the 1 year.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, per household, not per person.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, it's not simple as Kevin can tell you. It's not as simple as connecting. Sometimes the family is subleasing and the family they're with doesn't want to share the coverage, and there's all kinds of issues that get involved. So it could be higher, but it's the best we've been able to do. And thanks to Comcast, we've done a huge amount of effort to make this off the ground. And that's not us, it's schools, not me.
It's certainly a complex issue, and I mean, even when you're giving it away for free, like we are, I mean, you still have people that don't subscribe to it. So, but I think APS and the county have done a phenomenal job at outreach, and we actually use Arlington now as a model when we partner with other communities like Prince George's County or Baltimore, because of the things that we've kind of learned from APS and their outreach, just how successful it has been. And so, yeah, so I'm sorry, I just pulled it up. As of February 24th, so today, we have 547 households.
Mm-hmm.
So you're approaching, you probably exceeded 1,000 kids by now.
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, well, we'll move on to David. David, do you have updates for us and all kinds of things, I'm sure?
Yeah, it's just probably a quick update because I know we a lot of this is going to kind of overflow into the next topic that Jack's going to be presenting and Jack and I are going to be presenting. But the public website, just an important date. We're going to be trying to do a public beta of the new website starting in April. We're working on nailing down the exact date. So beta would be the new user interface for that. So what the new site will roughly look like and what that experience will be. So that's a big step forward for us. We've been kind of, in spite of COVID, we've been thrashing away trying to get that going, normal operations, trying to keep that going on that front. We're really excited about that. There's also going to be 2 opportunities for community engagement on that. And 2 exercises we're going to be doing for that. That's going to be open to everybody. So when we get to that point, I'll keep you all posted on that. And I would encourage you to engage in that experience and that feedback because we're listening to that. And our vendor's just been great to work with on this one as well. So that's kind of the big update. At least on the DTS side. And then, as I said, we're going to have some more information here that Jack's going to be getting into related to budget and what we've been working on.
Okay. All right. And David, is there an update on the report for the task force? The managers task force is that been submitted, or where is that right now?
Yep. So the core team submitted that report end of last year, so November, December. Actually, I think it was in November. That's with the county manager. We've been trying to get a next step on that with Mark, understandably because of COVID and budget. We've been trying to move forward in terms of next steps of meeting with the board on that report from the core team. So we continue trying to get that. We're hoping that once the budget situation becomes a little bit more settled here shortly, that he's going to be able to come up for air and actually be able to address that report and be able to meet with him and talk to him about that and get his take on that of what we submitted.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that update.
Yep.
And then Jack, it probably give us an idea about budget. I know we received, just for all of you, we received a slot, which is on the 11th. Frank and I'll be virtually, and I'll check and see. It'd be great if all of you could, tap in. I assume you'd be able to. I'll make sure that we do that. But the 11th of March, so we have a couple weeks. But Jack, can you give us an update on where things are?
On the budget, you saying, Mary?
Yeah, on the budget. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, and I don't mean to think this is humorous. David's been working very closely with public health, and we're doing everything we can to help him out.
Yes. I've, as Frank will tell you, I've had many conversations today about this.
And so it's wonderful to be the head of IT and to be criticized by everybody and their brother about how come we can't deliver a better vaccine administration system. And this is not an excuse; it's just a fact. The way it works is that the state public health director gives direction on what to do as regards vaccine administration and management system. And he directs the public health director in Arlington. We offer whatever assistance we can, but we have no control over it, no management control. In other words, when David's presented with this solution or that solution, he'll give his best advice, but all that is as advice. And so it's really up to the state and the local health director to decide how to manage that. And as you might know, every day things change. So one day we're not dealing with CVS, the next day Safeway's got it, and they give out. And that was a surprise to us. We were as surprised as you were. Now you can get your vaccines at the Safeway at Harrison Street. You couldn't before. So it's continuing to change. It's not working well. It's not just us. There are 19 other states. David can give you more of an analysis, but every state is running into issues, and they're getting. Some are better than others. And I wish I could give you a better insight, but that's where we are in terms of technology and what you're saying. Everything we do today is technology based. There's no way around it.
Right.
And so, this is so we accept the territory we're in, but there's little we can do about it. We just take direction from what we hear from the state.
Well, as you two things. One, I would like your read on how Fairfax has kind of opted out of the state piece, how that happened. And then two, just so you know, we have, Frank and I have raised this as an example of what happens when you have a federated model, right?
Yeah.
And so we have, we've actually, Frank, we've gotten quite interesting feedback already. So Jack, we hope this is a learning moment.
For me,
so that people, it really, so that we can do a
really learning moment for me, right? I try to move fast when I leave the house.
So that we can do a really solid after action review, because I think there are things to learn here, and there's also an understanding that technology is the lifeblood, and that you all need to be, I heard this a quick diversion. I was on a call with people who are delivering the vaccine, right, in areas in Africa. This was this morning. And the IT people were interviewed, right? and they said we are the first people they call and the last people they call. Because they issued phones and did all these things. And it's a perfect example, right? It's a public health issue, but the IT people are the ones who are helping to keep track of what is going on in the field.
Yeah.
So it's
I would
they're
add
there.
to the conversation, Mary, the article in the New York Times last Sunday, deep in the A section, regarding a current procurement lawsuit filed by a woman who produced a system and claims that maybe the Trump administration did not follow all of the procurement guidelines when it produced its federal system that
Oh, wow.
many
So
states
you're,
are moving away from.
I did
yes,
not
John,
see
you're
it. I
talking
didn't see
about
it.
prep on?
I'm referring to a New York Times article, David, that is in the paper for anyone to read, and
Okay,
I
look
think
at it.
it goes to show that how we buy things, procurement, has a huge impact on the performance of our technology solutions and services.
Very good point. Good point.
Um,
I did not see that, John. I'll pick that up. Mike, did you have a comment? Oh, you're muted, Mike.
I'm all for the after action report. I just want to point up that just a couple days after our meeting last month, I read an article from a Arlington newspaper that suggested some 3,000 registrants in the pre-registration system were being urgently hand keyed into another system by Arlington employees. And I obviously don't know the details of this, but that sounds like rock bottom to me. That if we're reduced to having a human labor force work over the weekend to rekey data that citizens have put into pre-registration systems, then something has clearly gone, very wrong. And it's hard for me to believe that was the best solution, even in the urgency of that moment. So as we do an after action report, I'd love to understand how we got to that state of affairs.
Yeah. No, you're actually correct. What happened was in that one example, Virginia Hospital Center decided they were no longer going to manage that. Now, how that happened, we don't know, but they turned over those names, and the county had to hand enter the names. They didn't have files. I mean, it's painful, and that's the type of stuff. When you look at it from an IT perspective, there's no excuse for that.
Right.
There's no reason that should happen. It's just a matter of. But again, it's a management issue. What John pointed out is what happened is a procurement issue took place, and a large vendor got the contract without really any competition.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
We were, just to give you an example, we saw early on there had to be a call center set up, a contact center set up that allowed for anybody to be able to come in, whether they spoke English, they wanted to text, whether they wanted to walk in, whether they want to call. Well, we were in the process of developing that, and we had found somebody to help us do it, and we had CARES money for it, and we got approached by the state, and the state said, stand down. We're going to set up ours, and ironically, it's the same company that got the contract for the detection, and they said we're going to stand up a center that can handle 8 million entries from the state of Virginia, and we'll have it up. We're going to be training 150 agents a day, and we'll have the thing running within 2 weeks. Well, any of us who came out of IT would say, that's ambitious. How are you going to do that? So we stood down. They went ahead and did it, and they're still having problems. So that's the
So
challenge we
there's
have.
lots of learnings, right, Jack? I
Lots
mean,
of
there
learning,
are
yeah.
lots of things that we need. I just don't want us to miss this opportunity to learn them,
Yeah.
and to integrate it into our next round.
Yeah.
Jack, anything about John mentioned last time we were together, we want to make sure and understand what the priorities are.
Yeah, we have a PowerPoint we can share with you if you like, very brief. You have.
That'd be great.
Yeah, we'll do it very quickly. David, do you want to bring it up? If you can.
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
Take your time. I'm sorry, I just dumped it on
No,
you.
that's fine. That's fine. And Angela, you're ready to take us on a tour after that, right? of the website after we get done with budget. Well, not done, but
Sorry, wrong window.
yes.
Hold on.
Thank you, Angela.
You're getting there. All right.
It's right. We love technology.
I have too many windows open right now. That's my fault. Sorry.
I don't
No,
anymore. I want you
we've
to know
been
that.
there. We've been there, David.
All
Couldn't
right,
believe
There
the
it
David.
is.
things I've
It's just a
shared with the
question of
world.
finding it.
There
Sorry.
you go.
There we go.
All right, David, you want to just scroll us through? The agenda is basically to talk about. Can you scroll?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about a little prologue, accomplishments, budget reductions, our themes, and what's the future look like. So let's go through it. Prologue. What's the first one? I can't be more proud of the staff I've brought on board. They have performed in ways that are extraordinary. Since March of 2020, they've done things that unheard of. And they come because they want to accomplish and achieve. And so we've done fantastic things. Accomplishments, want to go to 21? This is just a portion of the accomplishments. I'll give you a moment to look at it. This is not everything, but these are each and every one of these would have taken, in a normal time, would have taken time to do. They just rose to the occasion. David was part of a leader in many of these. Some of the things that stand out, we stood up 15 county-free hotspots, 24 APS hotspots. We've implemented a private LTE network for APS students, which we knew nothing about. We did it in 6 weeks to meet a governor's goal to set it up. We've set up an innovation zone in the county. We've expanded our cybersecurity program. Courts are now virtual. Your meetings are virtual. We have a contact center set up. We've transferred public health to electronic files. Teams did not exist as a product in March, and we went from Skype to Teams. And over 70% of our workforce is now off-site. That represents over 1,900 pre-configured laptops set in the field and set up. So amazing amount of work. So a lot has been done. Extraordinary amount of time, effort's been done. Budget themes. Coming down. All right. Frankly, we're focused on just-in-time updates and rehabilitation of our core back office systems. Ensure that we have availability and scalability and resiliencies in times of emergency. And we'll talk about that in a moment. We'll come out of this, but we're going to be a far different, I believe. And again, I wouldn't take what I say is to be fact, but from what I see, we're not going to be the same as we were in March of 2020. And so we have to really think about what is the new norm for delivery of government services. And that new norm is going to accommodate what we all know are the driving factors: connectivity, cybersecurity, data, Internet of Things, AI, and lastly, and I think this is so important, is robotic process automation. And I'm not talking about building robots, but I'm talking about looking at all the processes we do that are routine, repetitive, and automating those so that we can replace staff who we have to pay annual wages with processes that based on artificial intelligence. So we're very, very concerned that we do that as well. Next, budget reductions. In total, 850, actually it's 872,000. Sorry, I got the number wrong. I typed it up. It's $872,000 in our operating budget reduction. What this represents is 7.3 positions. Now, these are not filled positions. They're positions where people have decided to leave the county, and we're not going to fill them. They're contractors who we've had to release. They're management interns who are new lifeblood of people coming in who add fresh look to the county. The result's going to be reduced network and call center support. So when problems occur, it'll take longer time to fix those. So if we have a problem on, say, a Friday night, we used to pride ourselves on having it ready and go by Monday morning. That probably won't be the case. It's going to take longer to do so. We've reduced our core enterprise system support, whether it be in an enterprise resource planning tool, electronic management tool, whatever system we have where we can script, we're scripting. But again, when you lose 7.3 positions, that's over 14,000 hours of work a year that you're losing. Now you can say, well, yeah, but probably they weren't worth it. Well, they had to be doing something in that period of time. So you think that there's work that's going to hurt us. That work's going to hurt us. Training. A training budget's been eliminated. And we won't be doing that. We've had a 50% reduction in our Gartner consultancy. Why is Gartner important to us? What the Gartner is, they're a consultancy that gives us a look at what the future looks like. So when we have something come up where we're trying to find a way to go forward with, say, contact centers, or we wonder what robotic process engineering is and how it could impact us, there are people we can go to and he can help us manage that. And then lastly, we've had the reduction in our management intern program, which is good. We have 10 management interns. These are kids, young adults, who are coming out of college, may not have background in what we want, but have that spark in their eye. They want to learn, they want to grow, and we brought them on. We've had, I think now, 6 cohorts of these interns, and just about every one of them has performed amazingly. In fact, at the end of their tour, which is a 2-year or 3-year stint, and we pay them just minimum wage, they either come on board or they go on and they make far more money elsewhere, and they actually come back. We've had a couple of them come back under consultancies to work with us. So we're going to lose people there as well. Now, this is a favorite program with the manager as well. He would love to keep this program whole because that's where you get the lifeblood in. That's where you get people who have new ideas in. So, okay, so that's our budget reductions. And then what's the future look like? Well, right now, and this is our base, does not allow for just about anything. So necessary maintenance. We got to maintain what we have, and whether it be a new performance rating tool or identity management tool, new asset management, we don't have money for that in the budget. Now, that doesn't mean that new money becomes available, that will be made available to apply to this, but today, we don't have that. And then what I believe we have to really think about is what's the new norm? When we come back to work in the form where we do, how are we going to work? I really believe that the county workforce, the white collar workforce, may have been, 80% on site and 20% off site. We'll probably normalize to being a workforce that's here 2 days a week, and then 3 days a week they're off site. We'll do more hoteling. I think we'll need less office space. We'll need less phones. We'll need more cloud-based services that allow us to do jobs, to do work. What we call an omni-channel contact center. I know we've been talking to the treasurer about the ability to be able to receive calls anywhere, anytime, and to be able to make sure that she's given the service she needs to her people. And that's something we need to think about. Talent and attraction, retention. That's going to be key. I've got people here who are here not because of the money, but because of the fact that they like public service and they want to achieve. I like to say, I call them digital first responders. They're thoroughbreds. They want to make things happen. We need to keep these people, and so we need to find ways to invest in them. The manager's put in a budget. I think he's going to give every employee a $500 tax-free bonus. That helps, but again, in my staff case, it's not so much the money; it's what they've achieved, and if they feel they've made a difference, then they really feel good about themselves. Moonshots. We need to think about what the future is going to look like down the road. I really believe that, and Tim and I have talked about this and others, the need to leverage our fiber to create a private LTE network that really makes a difference, not only for education purposes, but reduces costs. Why are we spending as much money as we are on cell phone coverage? Or what are we going to do with Internet of Things to be able to manage that? And the cost it's going to take to collect that data and become more proactive as an organization. I think that's where we have to invest in. Data-driven services like AI and robotic process engineering have to be addressed. And then we really got to reduce some things that are obvious, as I mentioned earlier. Plastic on a desktop. Do we really need 1,900 desk phones there that we pay a fee on, and do we go more to a remote environment? These are all things that, to me, I think we need to look forward to. Is there any money for them? At this point in time, no. But I think we need to have an eye on what the future might look like. So the summary and forecast is I put here. We're doing what we need to do. I think we've demonstrated value. I don't think there's one of my colleagues who would say, if it wasn't for DTS, we would not be where we are today. I think they're all very, very appreciative. The challenge is that it falls into we've got a real serious budget crisis. And how do we meet that need? And there are factors around us that are rising. Biden administration is going to do technology modernization. I know, Mike, we've talked about this in the past. I mean, they have a new year budget plan they're going to put out with pouring money into redoing the way the infrastructure works. They're hiring 100,000 data analysts, data scientists. They want to hire a same number of cybersecurity people. Well, add to that what's happening with Amazon, and given the fact that we're in this remote working environment, so if I'm living in Loudon, Great Falls, and I'm working for the county, and I'm happy where I am, I can go work for Housing and Human Services, HUD, or I could go work for somebody else and do the same thing and make the same money and not have to leave where I am. And I think we're going to have to really, I think we're at a crossroads. We've done a lot. I wouldn't say that it's not insignificant. We get people come to us because of our reputation. They see that we've won this Digital Counties Award. I know a Mirror Award, a Hollywood Award, but we've got it 4 or 5 years in a row. And people come here because of that. Will they continue to come? I don't know. And I think that's something Mary and I talked about this. It's not about me. It's not me saying Jack wants to get more money here and put more staff here. I hope you believe that I've been here for a while because I really believe what I'm doing is important to the county. But I won't be here forever. And the commission's got to think about how do we continue this? Or the commission may say, you know what, we had our ride and we'll be fine. We got Amazon here. We can defer to what they do, JBG Smith. But I think we've got to be aware that that's coming up. So that's a very simple, high-level discussion, and I'm open to any questions you have. David and I could answer anything you might have.
Thanks, Jack. Any questions for Jack and David?
Jack, on the slide about unfunded above base requests, the section on needed maintenance, I think, was the most concerning. Would you mind bringing that back up?
Sure, Dave. Could you do that, David?
Yep. Once I find it again, so too much stuff.
Stop multitasking, David.
Yeah, you caught me.
This usually happens to me.
Takes one to know one.
Many tabs.
Takes one to know one.
Go back up to maintenance. Get a slide before. Yep.
I think the thing that's the most concerning to me there is the identity management software.
Yes, sir. That's the biggest. That's actually the biggest priced item there.
Yeah. I think that there's got to be, if I had to prioritize this list, that would be the thing that I think should be at the top of the list for closeout funding or one-time funding, because securing your enterprise is job zero. If you can't do that, nothing else matters. So, Mary, I think that should be, I'd recommend that would be included in our commentary to the board.
Yeah, and we'll get after our comments, obviously, we'll get a draft out and so that people can see some of the things. Yeah, that's great, John.
That's very perceptive. That represents 20 years of, IDs being added, not being managed correctly, duplications, big hole. So you can cut along without it, or you can go another year, no problem, but it's rolling the dice. Every year you roll the dice.
That's right. How lucky do we feel?
That's exactly right. The last one is very important too. If we don't go through a process now of identifying, moving the franchise along, we're going to have to come up to renegotiations, and we can postpone it for Comcast and Verizon, but it's necessary to get this underway so we can say what haven't we gotten, what should we be getting, what's the best we can expect, and it sort of lays a baseline for a discussion. And Frank and Mary have been through this, in the past where we've had these cable franchise negotiations, and they're really intense. And if you don't have that basic analyses of where you've been, especially with staff turnover, that's going to be an issue long term as well.
Yeah, these are investments. Okay. Any other comments before we
I'd like to offer one, and I'd just like to emphasize what Jack was saying. I mean, anyone who believes that the presence of Amazon and JBG Smith, which is a wonderful economic development situation for Arlington County, if anybody believes that automatically translates into high performance in county information systems, I have no idea why they think that's the case. I mean, I do think it would be a good idea to take some of these, for example, unfunded things, and identity management would be one example. And if the county could frame very carefully what help they would like to receive as an in-kind assistance from these world beaters, that would be great. But the idea that somehow they're going to find the attention to address needs of the county seems naive to me. And so it's wonderful to have them here for lots of good reasons. But if we do want to try to leverage their presence, I think we'd have to define some projects from a county point of view and say, will you help us do this? Otherwise, we'll just get, product development offerings from them.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments for Jack and for David?
Thank you, Walt. This is in the budget. It's in the budget book, and I think there's far more detail there in it. And again, this is not I don't mean this as a criticism of the budget. I wanted to be sure that you knew that we just weren't taking the cuts and saying everything's fine.
Right.
You noted.
Right.
There were things to be done yet.
I think one of the things is I think part of our role, Jack, is to point out the risks of making the decisions, right? Of not funding some of these things. I want to make sure when they're making the decision, they understand the risk.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for listening to me. Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. Jackie, did you have a comment? Did you have a question?
Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry, just saw it.
I think I'm unmuted. Yes?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. This may sound like it's not trivial, but it's like, what are you going to do about it? But I'm concerned at planning for not being able to respond as quickly to problems that come up, particularly in this continuing COVID environment where we know we have a system that has high degree of public visibility and dependence that we also know is not working. So I'm concerned that while in theory you can say things are going to take a few more days to fix, that in this continuing emergency circumstance, there will be pressure to fix that right away whenever it happens. It'll be, what do you mean it takes this much time? You need to have backup people who are able to shift over to this, immediate thing. And part of what you're doing is eliminating your flexibility and ability to respond to emergency situations. And some emergency situations, you will be told there isn't an option. They have to be done, and they have to be done now. So it is, you're talking about various types of risks. I think this is a significant risk, actually. Not that you would duplicate, but that you would at least have some vision of what you do when that crisis happens if you don't have any backup anymore. That's all.
Thanks, Jackie. Jack.
Yep.
Any comment?
No, Jackie hits right on the nose. we've all been IT shop people, and you always want to say yes. And sometimes to say no is really painful. To say no and you don't know how you can fix it, it's even more painful. We're going to face that. We face that. I'll give you an example. Just as an aside, one of the senior county managers was really upset with the fact that the board had said they had to get a board report out within 72 hours, and they couldn't do it. And they were upset. Why can't you? Where's the guy I need to fix this? Where is he? I said, we let him go last week.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing I can say.
Right.
And so
Right. Wow.
I'm not meeting the board's deadline. You're not meeting the board's deadline. I think what John said, I think the real key thing is that, incursions keep happening. The one thing that's kept us afloat is that we've been able to respond before they get out of hand. That may not happen. And I'm not trying to be dire.
No.
It's a balancing act. I
Right.
mean, do you fund potholes or do you fund
Mhm.
management? You got to make those decisions. Those are tough decisions.
Absolutely.
Tough decisions. And I'm glad I'm not the one making them.
All right. Well, thank you all. And we obviously our job is Frank and I'll do a draft, send it out to you all, and then we will be there and um, we'll make sure. I'm pretty sure all of you can because it's virtual. Frank, I think everybody is able to come on that day.
I would think so. Yeah, I think it's a
Yeah,
public,
public hearing.
public
So we'll
session.
make sure. Yeah, we'll make sure you get the link to that for March 11th. Next on our list, we're a kudo out to Angela, who has pulled together, making sure that our agendas and our meeting minutes and all those things are done. And she just wanted to show all of us at once so we can see where everything is. She kindly agreed to do that, just so if somebody asks you, as they know you're on the commission, where are things, you at least have a visual of where she, where she posts things, and we want to get really have quick turnaround to do that. So that's what that's our next doing that once the minutes are approved and all those things. Oh, thank you, Angela.
Okay. Okay, this is the main page for the advisory groups and commissions for ITAC. You see the website at the top here. If you forget to put ITAC, if you just put commissions.arlingtonva.us and you can click on ITAC and it would take you to this page. You get information about the advisory commission, meeting dates. If anything changes, it changes as far as a cancellation, I can just go in and update that. I add the agenda each week. I will add the minutes after they are approved. Tonight for January, I would add that here. The thing is, I think the problem, and well, let me go on. We have the members listed here. I've added our county board liaison. But I think the question I get a lot is, I don't see any past meetings. I don't see any details about upcoming meetings. So that's on a totally different site. And what I would like to do is add that site to this area and somewhere here in the body that you can click on and go to the calendar. And if you scroll down, you will see tonight's, well, you should see it. Here we go.
There we are.
This is for tonight. So of course I don't have the minutes and everything in the video recording, but this is just the basic information if anyone wants to go in and see any information about tonight's meeting. But if you go back to the calendar and say you want to see what happened in November, is it moving? Hold on. Okay. Say we want to go, oh, you heard it was a great meeting in November and you want to get more information about that. You can just scroll back to November. And if you go down here to the meeting date, you get a lot more information. Of course, you don't need this part anymore, but you have the agenda, you have the minutes, the approved minutes, you have the recording of the meeting, you have all of the information that was shared in the meeting that's listed here. And I do that every month, at least I try to. I had to go make some updates from previous months when I wasn't doing maintenance on this, but everything should be up to date. So what I want to do is take this page, this link, and add it, the calendar link, and add it to the main page, because that seemed to be the big mix-up. I don't see anything about the meetings. I don't know where to click to get to the meeting.
Great.
And this is the page that everyone goes to. So I want to add that information to this area and somewhere here in the body, big and bold, where people can just click on it and go to it.
Oh, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be
and
great.
If you have any suggestions, please, because I'm not a web expert. I just click around.
No, John, did you have a question?
Yeah, just one point of personal pride, because it's my crowning achievement so far as a tech commission member, is that we rebranded as the Tech Commission. So instead of ITAC, so that people more intuitively knew what we did. So I
And it is
appreciate
in one place, John. I saw it one place. It actually, that's the thing.
Right.
It is in the meeting one. It says Tech Commission, but you're right. We'll
So I would
change
love
it
it
here
if we
as well.
could get that updated. Thank you,
Yeah,
Angela.
Okay. All right. All
Appreciate
right.
you.
that's
No
great.
problem.
Yes, we do appreciate you, Angela. Thank you so much. It's
No
great.
problem.
Oh, look at
Hey,
that. You've
Angela.
got a lovely work. Look at that, Angela. You got a kudo.
Hey, Angela. Some of what we've been doing is in the interest of public engagement. And
Mhm.
so it seems unlikely to me that a member of the public would be able to identify a calendar date on which a certain subject was taken up and use that method to find the material they're looking at. Whereas I think it would be much more natural for somebody to say, hey, what's going on with that idea of a broadband authority? Or what's going on with contact tracing? Or what's going on with, you know, uh, privacy? So is there a means by which a citizen armed with only a topic of interest could get to the right place?
That's a good question. One that I have to do some investigating on, some research on how I would just add that. I guess I could add some subjects, maybe on a sidebar or something with different subjects. You know, that's an idea. But I'll talk more with David and our web people here at Arlington, and we'll work on that. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. All right. Okay, and I know we're running a little bit late, but this has all been really good conversation. Speaking of minutes, did any changes to the minutes January 27th? Any revisions, comments? And Angela, thank you again so much. It's what a difference. It's really good to be able to go in and get all this information. So really appreciate it. If there are no changes to the minutes as you were sent, I will welcome a move to adopt.
I move we adopt.
Thanks, Phil. Second?
I second.
Thanks, Frank. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Against? Abstaining? All right. Looks like we've got minutes adopted. Okay. Well, Frank, as usual, Frank, you're going to bring us home.
In 30 seconds.
No, that's okay, Frank. You can take a little bit. I'm sure
right.
we're hanging in there with you.
Well, thank you for the preview there, Jonathan. I do want to, I will go as quick, but the current FCC is all about broadband and broadband relief. Anyway, the FCC is currently seeking comment on some petitions that have been filed for emergency relief to allow use of E-rate funds to support remote learning during the pandemic, as well as looking to also use that towards devices as well, some home devices. So that FCC has set up a comment period for comment on these emergency petitions that have been filed looking to use E-rate funds to help close this remote learning deficit. Back to the security issue. Oldsmar, Florida, which is located near Tampa, their water treatment plant was hacked, and somebody tried to actually increase the sodium hydroxide, which is, I think, hydrochloric acid, was increased 100-fold. But fortunately, there was a staff person who was monitoring, noticed that something was going askew and was able to cut it off before it actually had any kind of effect. It was a scary reminder that security is still a very important factor for the local governments. The House Energy and Commerce Committee passed, as part of its COVID relief legislation, Emergency Education Connections Act, which will allocate $7 billion to the E-rate program to help fund Wi-Fi hotspots, modems, routers, and internet-enabled devices, including internet service, through such equipment to students, staff, and patrons. So that's part of the big package that's hopefully moving forward. House Republicans have introduced 28 bills to expedite broadband build out, including shot clocks for local approvals, to expand access on federal lands, streamlining historic and environmental reviews. So our own Jonathan Adelstein, in his role as CEO of the Wireless Infrastructure Association, did testify on Capitol Hill at a broadband hearing at the House Telecom Subcommittee. He endorsed some of those policies included in the House Republican package. He also supported the House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn's Affordable Internet for All Act, which would again provide some additional money for broadband infrastructure package. Jonathan did advocate for promoting co-location at existing infrastructure, which would and that there ought to be an emphasis on providing more skilled 5G workforce, including through apprenticeships. At its February,
Frank, for the acknowledgement.
putting in the plug for you there, Jonathan. And at its February 17th meeting, the FCC received a presentation on the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, which was approved in the COVID Relief Act passed at the end of last year. And the current Lifeline program carriers may participate without further FCC approval. The benefit will provide a discount up to $50 per month for broadband to low-income households. That includes people on the SNAP program, others, getting subject to the eligible for the school lunch program. Anyway, there's also going to be a one-time up to $100 discount for laptop, desktop, or tablet purchased from the provider through that, and the household must pay between $10 to $50 towards that device. Rules should be adopted by the end of February. A draft is currently being circulated. I think that's all I've got.
Is that a wrap?
That's a wrap.
Wow. All right. I promise you'll be up higher in the agenda next time, Frank. You always seem to have to bring us home. Thank you. Next, we will meet on March 24th, but you'll see some emails from us before then because of the March 11th budget. Aaron Miller, the head of emergency management, thanks, Jack, for coordinating that for us, will be briefing us on several things. Frank suggested a long list of things, of updates, in addition to, obviously, Aaron is one of the people coordinating the county's response to COVID. But so he will be here on the 24th, and he'll be our leadoff batter, as we say, and we appreciate him taking the time to do that. And if there's any pre-reads, we'll make sure that Angela gets those out to you before we meet on Wednesday the 24th. Any closing comments, and then I'll recognize a move to adjourn.
Hey, Mary, if I haven't worn out my welcome, I'll say we've had some good conversation here about the costs of connectivity, and I think we also need to keep track of what it costs to serve citizens of Arlington, because it may be that by the time you get them that connectivity and you get a device in their hand, that although we'd be well aware of the current period cost of doing that, what Jack talked about in terms of process automation, some of the other benefits of that around administration of social services and how to get in touch with people, it may be that the cost incurred to get that connectivity is more than offset by the reduction in the cost to serve those citizens when you compare it to the non-digital way.
Yeah, it's an ecosystem, right? Yep, got it. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it could lead to other efficiencies. Yeah.
And it better. That's our job, to make it do so. But it's easy. It's easy to get, in the context of the budget, it's easy to fix on the cost in the current period and not the potential cost avoidance down the road.
Right. Someone else was
just in terms of maybe one comment on that. With all these federal programs coming out, Jack, I wonder if you can save a little bit on the budget by switching people over to some of these federal assistance plans for emergency connectivity, because that, that for the county is totally free.
Yep.
Are you looking into sort of whether there's a substitutability there?
Yeah, it's great. I don't know if you were on earlier. I was listening to a discussion by Stanky of AT&T. He said he'd love to see that the government focus some of their programs, their health programs, with an allotment for broadband as part of it. It's dedicated, like you were saying, the food stamps program. Could there not be money added, which basically says that you're spending you allocate this money for that. In other words, to make an incentive, give them an incentive to get the services. And it goes back to the whole question of his comment was, and you may have already heard this, that he really feels the Lifeline program is currently situated is unsustainable. So how do you provide for that? And that's what I was asking Frank earlier. Is are you hearing the same thing, Jonathan? There's a move afoot to have discussions like that, more open discussion.
Yeah, there seems to be a consensus growing among the carriers to try to provide this assistance to low income. The Lifeline's got a problem because it's being paid for on long distance, if you can believe that, long distance telephone charges, which is now 30% of the telephone long distance bill is universal service. So that's why it's not sustainable, but there's not really a consensus yet where to sort of hit that tax up. The carriers like AT&T, I saw Stanky, he wants to go to general revenues. But that, if the Republicans take over, might just disappear because they don't have support as much for the low income program. So it's kind of, there's not an easy answer to it. I don't think, but certainly, these programs that were just passed, it sounds like some of the programs that Arlington is wisely taken up to help the low income kids are duplicative of some of these new federal programs that Frank outlined. I just didn't know, it's hard to get them signed up. Sometimes even for free, you can't get people to sign up, but get them to switch over might be tough too, but it might save a little bit for the county to offload that onto the federal program, given the tight budget situation. Just a thought to look at.
No, you're right on target. I was talking to Raju Atsumali from schools about the fact that the E-rate program Frank was talking about, where apparently the $7.3 billion they're putting into that which will flow through the libraries to go to distance learning for the kids. And I brought that up to APS, and they have actually a E-rate consultancy on board, who surprisingly was somewhat aware of it, not fully aware of what that program is, but that's a perfect example where if you could take that money and divert it to whatever extent to subsidize some of this. I think it would be, there's the opportunities there. It's just knowing how to get it. Hey, keep us informed. I know you and Frank you guys have got your your ears to the road here. So if you hear anything,
we've got insider stuff.
Send me an email, whatever you do, please.
We'll continue to do so.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much, everybody. Any who would like to make a move to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you, Frank. Second?
I second.
Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye and bye. All right.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks,
Take
everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Did a lot of work today. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.